Book of Heaven, Volume 4. 1 July to 10 August 1902. Page 132 to 137. July 1, 1902. True victims must expose themselves to the pains of Jesus. Machinations against the Church and against the Pope. As I was in my usual state, I found myself outside of myself, kneeling on an altar together with 2 more people. In the meantime Jesus Christ appeared over this altar, and he said, "True victims must have communication with my very life. They must avail themselves of my very self, and expose themselves to my very pains." While saying this, he took a pyx in his hand and gave communion to all 3 of us. After this, behind that altar there seemed to be a door which led into a street filled with people and jam-packed with demons, in such a way that one could not walk without being squeezed by them. And since it was full of thorns, extremely sharp, one could not make a movement without feeling one's flesh being pricked deep inside. At any cost, I would have wanted to escape those diabolical furies, and I almost tried to do it. But someone, I don't know who, prevented me by saying to me, "Everything you see are machinations against the Church and against the Pope. They would want the Pope to get out of Rome by invading the Vatican and seizing it, and if you want to avoid these bothers, men and demons will acquire strength and will make these thorns come out which will prick the Church bitterly. But if you content yourself with suffering them, both the one and the other will be weakened." On hearing this I stopped, but who can say what I went through and suffered? I thought I would never again get out from the midst of those diabolical spirits. However, after staying there almost one whole night, divine protection freed me. July 3, 1902. Jesus speaks about his Eucharistic life. Continuing in my usual state, I found myself outside of myself, inside a church, and since I could not find my adorable Jesus, I went to knock at a tabernacle to have him open it for me. Since he would not open, made brave, I myself opened it and I found my sole and only good. Who can say my contentment? I remained as though ecstatic in looking at an unspeakable beauty. On seeing me, Jesus flung himself into my arms and told me, "My daughter, each period of my life receives from man distinct and special acts and degrees of imitation, of love, of reparation and other things. But the period of my Eucharistic life is all life of hiddenness, of transformation and of continuous consummation. So much so, that I can say that after my love reached the excess and was even consumed, in my infinite wisdom I could not find any other external sign to prove my love for man. And just as my incarnation, life and passion on the cross receive love, praise, thanksgiving, imitation, my sacramental life receives from man an ecstatic love, a love of dissolving oneself in me, a love of perfect consummation. And as the soul is consumed in my very sacramental life, she can say that she performs, before the divinity, the same offices that I perform continuously before God for love of men. And this consummation will make the soul overflow into eternal life." July 7, 1902. Continuous humiliation with Christ will give rise to everlasting exaltation with Christ. This morning, since blessed Jesus was not coming, I felt all confused and humiliated. Then, after I struggled very much, he made himself seen for just a little, telling me, "Luisa, always humiliated with Christ." And I, pleased and yearning to be humiliated with Christ, said, "Always, O Lord." And he repeated, "And the always of the humiliation with Christ will give rise to the always of the exaltation with Christ." So I understood that as many humiliations as the soul undergoes with Christ and for love of Christ, if they are continuous, so many times will the Lord exalt her, and he will make this exaltation continuously before the whole celestial court, before men, and finally, even before demons themselves. July 28, 1902. A spirit of continuous prayer. Continuing in my usual state, I found myself outside of myself, and I found my adorable Jesus who, not wanting to show me the troubles of the world, told me, "My daughter, withdraw. Do not want to see the evils, most grave, which are in the world." And on saying this, he withdrew me himself, and while carrying me he repeated, "What I recommend to you is a spirit of continuous prayer." The continuous effort of the soul to converse with me, whether with her heart, or with her mind, with her mouth, or even with a simple intention, renders her so beautiful in my sight, that the notes of her heart harmonize with the notes of my heart. I feel so drawn to converse with this soul, that I manifest to her not only the works ad extra, external, of my humanity, but I keep manifesting to her something of the works ad intra, interior, which the divinity did in my humanity. Not only this, but the beauty that a spirit of continuous prayer makes her acquire is so great, that the devil is as though struck by lightning, and remains frustrated in the snares he lays in order to harm this soul. Having said this, he disappeared, and I found myself inside myself. July 31, 1902. True charity must be disinterested. As I was in my usual state, I saw my adorable Jesus several times, but always in silence. I felt all confused and would not dare to ask him anything, but it seemed that he wanted to tell me something which wounded his sacred heart. Finally, the last time he came, he told me, "My daughter, true charity must be disinterested on the part of one who does it, and on the part of one who receives it. If there is interest, that mud produces a smoke which blinds the mind, and prevents one from receiving the influence and the effects of divine charity. This is why in many works that are done, even holy, in many charitable cares that are performed, one feels as though a void, and they do not receive the fruit of the charity they do." August 2, 1902. During the whole course of his life, Jesus redid everything, for all in general and for each one individually. This morning, after letting me struggle very much, all of a sudden my adorable Jesus came, spreading rays of light. I was invested by that light and, I don't know how, I found myself inside of Jesus Christ. Who can say how many things I comprehended inside that most holy humanity? I can only say that his divinity directed his humanity in everything. And since in one single instant the divinity can do as many acts as each of us can do in the whole period of one's life, and as many acts as one wants to do, I comprehended with clarity that, because the divinity operated in the humanity of Jesus Christ, during the whole course of his life blessed Jesus redid for all in general and for each one individually everything that each one is obliged to do toward God, in such a way that he adored God for each one in particular, he thanked, repaired, glorified for each one, he praised, suffered, prayed for each one. And I comprehended that everything that each one must do has already been done before in the heart of Jesus Christ. August 10, 1902. Privations, laments and necessity of chastisements. As I am greatly afflicted because of the loss of my highest good, my poor heart is lacerated continuously and suffers a continuous death. Now, as the confessor came, I was telling him of my poor state, and he began to call him and to place his intention, but, no, my mind was left suspended. It would see as though a flash for a few instants, which would escape, and I would return inside myself without seeing him. Oh, God, what pain! But these are pains that one does not even know how to express. Then, after much struggling, finally he came, and as I lamented to him, he told me, "My daughter, if you did not know the reason for my absence, perhaps you would have some reason to lament about my absence. But since you do know that I am not coming because I want to chastise the world, wrongly do you lament." And I, "What does the world have to do with me?" And he, "Yes it does, because if I come you tell me, 'Lord, I myself want to satisfy you on their behalf, I want to suffer for them.' And since I am most just, I cannot receive the satisfaction of a debt from both one and the other, and if I wanted to take the satisfaction from you, the world would do nothing but grow ever bolder. Rather, in these times of rebellion, chastisements are so very necessary, and if I did not do so, darkness would become so thick that all would remain blinded." While he was saying this, I found myself outside of myself, and I saw the earth all full of darkness, with just barely a few trails of light. What will happen to the poor world? It causes one to think much about the most sad things that will happen.